Hello and welcome to Sacred Psychology, the podcast for misfits and mystics. Here, neuroscience and spirituality go hand in hand. Join me, Tamara Powell, on a no-holds-barred adventure outside the box, because that's where all the truly great shit happens anyway. Welcome back to the Sacred Psychology Podcast. I'm your host, Tamara Powell. Today marks the start of Season 3. Can you believe it? Man, I tell you what, time has flown by for me. When I opened my private practice in 2014 and began making videos on Facebook and YouTube, etc., I'd often hear from friends and colleagues, you should have a podcast. The idea seemed so daunting though. And then offers began coming in to be a guest on other people's podcasts or blog talk radio and local news pieces, And I remember thinking, wow, this is pretty cool. I could get used to this. I wonder if it's possible to do a podcast. So then fast forward to 2016, and I came across a course in podcasting by an amazing colleague and superhost himself, Melvin Varghese of Selling the Couch. I was working with a coach at that time, and one of the goals on my vision board was to launch a podcast and have it on iTunes. So I took the leap and did the course, which I highly recommend, by the way, if you're interested in such things, especially for any other technologically challenged and super anal types like myself. Hello. The course came with an amazing support network in the form of a Facebook group filled with other podcasters, many of them counselors and healers like myself. And that's where I was given Pete's name. He's my audio Adonis and producer for Sacred Psychology. He does all the tech work behind the scenes, and I couldn't do it without him. So shout out to Pete. Thanks for keeping me sounding great. We launched in January of 2017, and now here we are a little over a year and a half later, and I am amazed at all the incredible conversations we've had, and I'm so grateful for the community that we're building. My vision has always been to open the dialogue on mental health and wellness and spirituality in all of its forms, right? Like as an omnist and outside the box practitioner myself, there's nothing I love more than sitting with another human being and hearing how they see the world and what lights them up. This podcast is literally an extension of that. So thank you. Thank you for being here with me. Truly, it means the world to me, and I cannot wait to kick off Season 3. Which brings me to today's guest, Lieutenant Commander Jamie Sorenson. While her resume is beyond impressive, her energy is downright infectious and utterly magnetic. When I first came across her on Instagram talking about her book, Why You Tried to Kill Yourself, I knew I wanted to talk to her. So I sent her a DM, and here we are. Jamie is a psychiatric nurse practitioner who is currently serving as the embedded mental health provider at Command Submarine Squadron 11 out in San Diego, California. There she provides mental health treatment, education, consultation, and so much more to all of the sailors and submariners attached to that division. Her awards include the Navy Marine Corps Commendation Medal, Joint Service Achievement Medal, and the Navy Achievement Medal. She was also honored as the Psychiatric Advanced Practice Mental Health Nurse of the Year in 2013 by San Diego Psychiatric Nursing Society. And like I said, she wrote and published this book called Why You Tried to Kill Yourself. But guys, as if that weren't enough, Jamie has completed over 80 whole or half marathons. She's an avid traveler and animal lover, and I'm proud to call her one of my new friends. In today's interview, she and I cover a wide range of things, from what it's like to be a badass, high-achieving woman in the military, to the difficulty facing service members in getting great mental health care without feeling like a failure or worrying about their careers, the BS of stigma around mental health in general, and the intersection of mental health and spirituality, as well as her book, which is quickly becoming a series of books, I learned. So, without further ado, I give you a woman I am absolutely in awe of. The one, the only, Lieutenant Commander Jamie Sorenson. Hey, Jamie, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Tamara. It's great to be here.
Thank you so much for taking time out of your very busy career to stop by and share a really important topic with us. So, how in the world did you decide on the Navy back in the 90s, girl? Why the Navy?
Oh, you know what? It was always a fascination with the water. I always felt, like certain individuals belong near the ocean, and that was it. That was the ocean. I wanted to be near the ocean. I grew up in Montana.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense then.
Yeah.
Now, did you always know that nursing was going to be a thing for you?
No, never. In fact, that was one of the last things I ever wanted to do. All I ever wanted to do when I was a kid was be an accountant.
Shut up, really?
Absolutely.
Fascinating.
Yeah, but actually, it was good because I use numbers a lot with my patients. When we talk a lot about percentage, this affects this percentage of people. So it's really great to have the numbers background. When I was 18, I was raised by my grandmother and she passed away. And then I had like 2 other tragic deaths at a very short period of time.
Oh, wow.
And so then I decided I want to be a psychologist because I was taking a psychology class and it was so interesting. And then I was too much of a busybody to just sit still. So I went into nursing and eventually psychiatric nursing.
I love that. And so needed in the military. I mean, we've just had this push-pull with mental health and the military and really trying to destigmatize it, I think, for probably as long as we've had the military.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it must be really, I would imagine, heart-pulling for you to see both sides, both as a woman in the military, and you're not just an enlisted, you're actually a lieutenant commander. So no small thing there. And to sort of be able to see it though, both from a professional side as a psychiatric nurse practitioner, but then also as an officer.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And it's interesting because you bring up stigma. My current job is I'm what's called embedded, like an embedded mental health provider, which means basically if it would be like I worked for a Walmart branch and Walmart purchased my position description and I just took care of everybody that works at Walmart. But for me, I take care of everybody that's associated with the submarines in my current area. So I get to kind of run my own program. So actually today it was a recreational therapy day with several of the individuals that I care for, and I kind of get to create my program as we go. But one of the things that's so important to me is education. And I actually did a suicide prevention speech yesterday, and I will tomorrow night at a different university. But education is so crucial. So 100% of the individuals checking in have to check in with me. And it's an hour sit down. It's not like, oh, you have to go see the mental health provider. It's strictly education. And part of the education check-in with me is they have to do a mental health scavenger hunt, which...
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, they are required to go, and if they're going through having a bad day and they need to be cheered up, they have to go and find a video they've never listened to, like something that could motivate them, maybe like a Tony Robbins video. A lot of them find limitless passion. And they also have to, they get a hypothetical situation where they have to go and find a book that could help somebody else who was going through a really hard time. And that's just part of it. I go over, diet, gut health. I talk about porn addiction and how it impacts young men because, currently 100% of all my patients are men. So the education piece is huge. And so because their first week checking in, they meet me and they get to know me for an hour and we talk about so much stuff. They feel like they know me. And so I was teasing my boss the other day. I'm like, oh my God, I wish it was stigmatized. I said, I'm so tired. I need a break.
So I love so much in what you just said there, because it, to me, takes me really back to that community prevention model of really helping attack things before they even become an issue. And so by sitting down with you and getting that awareness and education piece, where you're really giving them that awesome dose of prevention to not make it an issue if it does pop up later on.
Yeah. And not only that, it's a personal accountability. Like when they came back to me, it's like, okay, what have you done for yourself already? Like it's very much empowering. So to me, that's, my absolute favorite thing by having the autonomy in my current job is being able to provide the education piece.
Yes. So how did you end up finally getting to a space where you could do that? Because most of us on the outside imagine the military being very, regimented and rigid with them telling you how to do things.
Well, I paid my dues over and over and over again. So I started working in mental health nursing in 2006. And, I went to UVA for grad school. I got out in 2010. Then I deployed twice after that, one time for a year, and I took hot field billets and just really hard positions. And what had happened was there was a notice coming out saying, submariners are super well trained. They're incredibly brilliant individuals. So their training is very, very expensive. I mean, some of it's like at least $2.5 million per individual for just some of the training. So it was like, you know what? But their jobs are hard. They have an incredibly hard job. So, they needed somebody, they wanted somebody at the forefront. And so a billet came out for a psychologist, and the doctor who ran all of mental health for San Diego, he had known me to deploy a couple times. He was very confident with my skills. And he's like, you know what? I really want to use Jamie for this position. There's kind of like a joke, like, oh, it's Mikey, he'll eat it. It's Jamie, she'll do it.
That's awesome.
And so he's, so it was like basically go there and create your own program, and I of course was, doing the hour-long appointments or whatnot. But then it was like, you know what, there needs to be more. And being as I'm embedded and I'm my own boss, I have 4 bosses, but then again, I'm my own boss. So I kind of was able to create, meet the needs of the patients, for, my recreational therapy, so education's number 1, my recreational therapy is number 2, and just spending 4 or 5 hours, with individuals and just talking to them about life and who they are and what their goals are, and establishing that rapport with them, and I asked one of the guys today, actually all of them, I said, would you rather have 5 1-hour sessions with me or a 5-hour outing like this where it's a group? And all of them across the board, it's an outing. We're sitting in Balboa Park talking about dreams, plans, goals, how to reach those, limitations, breathing exercises, all of those things. And, just life in general, but then again, it's like gets them to be so much more compliant with treatment once they have that relationship with me as well.
Absolutely. And I can see how so much of that would, transition to the civilian world as well, and the civilian mental health practitioners. If we could adapt more of that model, I really think shit would get so much easier.
Yeah.
But I sometimes think that from the outside world, once, they leave the military or step out, that we take ourselves too preciously sometimes in the mental health field. Very ironically, I think listening to your program, we're probably way more rigid than you are.
Well, I mean, I am definitely the exception. Trust me, I've had, nonstop, patients 30 minutes, patients an hour, spec, whatever. But, it's just really unique to this position, but it's done really well. There's a 87% reduction in unplanned losses, meaning prior to my arrival, there was an 80% higher number of individuals not able to continue in the submarine forces for mental health reasons. But it's a time devotion, so sometimes I'll have to spend 4 hours with an individual, and sometimes, but my volume's down, but it's just, it's like, this is your group. These are your people.
Right.
Take care of them and provide the absolute best care to them. And that's, been my privilege and my honor to do that. I think some of them kind of, because I'm 40, and a lot of the guys, are 21, 22, 23. I think they kind of see me as like this grumpy mom that cares about them. So, yeah.
That's great.
But yeah.
What are some of the key issues that you find with military members and submariners specifically?
Well, I mean, submariners are truly some of the hardest workers in the world, but the being gone so much, and then the long working hours, and you have to understand too, I mean, these individuals are coming, young people in the military, they're coming from, their parents' couch and hanging out with their friends and their buddies, and, maybe they had a job working 10, 20 hours a week, and now all of a sudden they're working 60 plus hours a week. I mean, that's hard. It's a very hard transition.
Wow.
Yeah.
That really does take a toll, not only on, mental and emotional well-being, but how we relate to other people and how we view ourselves in the world, I would imagine. I could see a lot of existential questions popping up.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that's really important that I tell them, and one of my good friends, he's a psychiatrist. I always tease him and call him Harvard because he's actually really humble, but he went to Harvard. But anyway, it's just a joke between me and him. And, he, I was watching him and he's like, one of the big things, he's like, what kind of husband, what kind of father, what kind of partner are you going to be? So when I'm talking to someone who's 22 who's really struggling, it's like, I'm here to help you work through your problem. I'm not here to enable you. I'm not here to get you out of your problem. Pain is what helps us grow. Uncomfortableness is what helps us grow. And I get it. It's hard and you're tired and exhausted, and I'm going to help you work through it. But I am not going to say that you can't handle it. Because if when you're 21 and I'm sitting here as a medical professional signing a piece of paper saying, yeah, I just don't think you can handle it. I just don't think you can do it. It's just too hard. You're at,
Ouch.
a quarter of your life, and the rest of your life, you're going to have that staying with you. You're going to have that stigma. You're going to have that own self-talk. Yeah, I just couldn't handle it. It's just too hard, and you were just going through an immediate situation, which in a few weeks is going to resolve itself. So I'll help you and I'll stay with you, but I'm not here to get you out of this problem. I'm not here to limit your ability to grow.
Oh, I love that. What do you think more mental health providers should know about working with military members?
Well, not to watch NCIS and think it's perfectly accurate.
Yes.
Well, I mean, so again, I'm a person of numbers, and so honestly, first of all, military members get an incredible amount of mental health services. So I go out in the community and I do a lot of suicide prevention. So any day, the submariners could have access to me. There's like 5 counselors across the street, 3 of them are psychologists, emergency room. They just have someone, 24 hours a day that they can talk to, and I was giving a speech at a university not too long ago, and somebody followed me out and told me, that they had been trying to get mental health treatment. This is a civilian for 4 months, and they couldn't get it, and they had just had a suicide attempt, and, they were so grateful I was there, and could I tell them how to get treatment? Like, where could they go? And of course I did, but, there's tons and tons of services for active duty military as far as mental health programs. And I think that that's sometimes not seen that way. I know that individuals, are on isolated areas and it might be more difficult, but in general, there's Military One Source, there's active duty providers, there's, at the hospitals, at the clinics, some places even have teleservices.
Right.
I think that the media misrepresents, showing that there's not enough services for military. And compared to civilians, having friends in the community who need help and whatnot, knowing how long they're waiting versus, my patients see me the same day most of the time. And especially if it's acute, it's definitely the same day. But they get a lot of service. Yeah, they get a lot of services. They get a lot of treatment. And then too, I'm working with brilliant doctors. Like one time I was working with a doctor and she said, I got this patient, she was a psychologist, really respect the lady a lot. And she had diagnosed this lady with combat PTSD, and so I had sat down, I did a timeline with her, and I found out she had never left the States. So I went and I talked to the psychologist, I'm like, yeah, you kind of have to, leave the States, so it's just, that, know the ins and outs, especially really young individuals who've never deployed, don't make those assumptions. I was on an airplane one time and somebody said, oh, you're in the military, you must have PTSD. That's a very wrong assumption, and I think so many people almost use the word PTSD synonymously with military, and it's just that's not the case for most individuals, and a lot of people are very psychologically hardy, and, bad stuff happens just like it does to 85% of the population, and people are resilient and they come through.
No, you make a brilliant point there, because I don't think the media does a very good job with presenting a, holistic, well-rounded perspective on that, and particularly I'm thinking back to, my 20s and 30s, because you and I are the same age, and thinking about, members coming back from Desert Storm, Desert Shield, Enduring Freedom, and we had that, and they made it look like this big rash of murder-suicides, and the media really spun it as if all these military members did not have access to services. And so I think it's really helpful for our listeners to hear that that's not always the case. My sister's a licensed clinical social worker at NAS Pensacola, and her workload and her experiences sound exactly like what you're talking about. There's so much available, and they can get seen the same day, whereas I'm on the outside in private practice. And you're right, depending upon what they're coming in for and what they're specifically looking for in a counselor, it could be quite a while before they end up getting the right fit.
Oh, absolutely. And, like we have what's called Military One Source, which, individuals can go out and pick their own counselor out in town and have all of these sessions. But then not only that, there's civilian programs. Like, for example, there's a Give an Hour program, which civilians, like, for example, I was looking up something for somebody else, and it's like they get 1 hour a week with a civilian. It's like 20 psychologists popped up and social workers, with 20 plus years experience. And they were, that, they give them 52 hours a week, in a year. I'm sorry, 52 hours a year. Some of the psychologists that I've talked to that are, gracious enough to give that service, they're like, oh, I'll see this person, 2 hours this week, but not every year. But I mean, that is just an amazing program. One gentleman was getting out of the military not too long ago, and he had something, personal within his family happened. And he said, what's available to me? I pulled up the Give an Hour program. I said, what state are you going to? And it wasn't Florida. I'll just say hypothetically Florida, because I know that's where you are.
Yep.
And I typed in Give an Hour. And, I showed him, look, these are individuals. This person's 25 miles. This person's 5 miles from you. And it's a Give an Hour program. And they're receiving clients. They will see you 52 times in a year.
Right.
And it was just like he was just baffled. So it's not just the military. There's a lot of civilian organizations and stuff that are super military friendly. So I'm really grateful for those as well. And I want to make sure that, they get properly recognized for, all they do.
That just makes my heart all warm and fuzzy. Yes.
Yeah.
Hey, let's point to the good that's also happening all around. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So tell me, why the pull towards inpatient and acute mental health issues? Because that really, I'm assuming, led up to this book that we're going to talk about.
You know what? So it's so interesting. Actually, the reason that I wrote this book is I've been in for 23 years, and for probably 16 of those years, I have had amazing and wonderful and fantastic individuals to work for. And I am so grateful.
You got lucky. Yes, very blessed.
Yes, obviously pushed me through. But, there was a stint in my career where I worked for people, and I refer to them as, me personally, as the demonic mentors. I was not happy with them at all. And I really, really suffered. And this was after I'd been in the military almost 20 years. So I knew it wasn't right, and I knew it wasn't okay. And for whatever reason, I'm a huge person of faith. So I think God was just really testing me. And so I really could not let go of this anger that I had with what had happened to me and what had happened to other individuals. And I was driving across country. I was driving from Virginia down to Texas, and then Texas to California. And I was actually listening to Joel Osteen on Sirius XM, and he kept saying, what was meant for your harm will be used for your good. And I'm like, how's that going to happen? And I went down to Houston, and I met up with a friend, and she has, really severe depression and PTSD. And what had happened, what had happened to me and her was similar, but I think I was just a lot more psychologically hardy than her. But I was just so upset to see her so broken and so fragile. And she's older than me, but she's really tiny. She's about 4'11", and just this tiny little thing. I always call her my little friend. But I got to the hotel. I knew she wasn't doing well. I really wanted to check on her. And she shows up at the hotel, and I open the door, and she just cried for like 3 hours. And I was like, here's my little friend who's older than me, in so much pain. And I was just so angry about that. But I had to really, be there for her. It wasn't about my anger. And then the next day I went and saw another friend, and, she was doing much better than before. But, just a wonderful, wonderful person. And I was very angry about what had happened to her. And I said, what? I'm going to write a book, and I'm going to expose, these people for what they did. And so I said, I'm going to call it, Bullies with Power and Control, or something like that. And so the next day, I'm a very determined person. The next day I sat down and I started writing that. And so that was in Texas. I got to Vegas. I worked on it a bunch more. I stayed there for like 10 days of rest and relaxing. I'd been overseas for almost 3 years. So I was just taking a bit of time off. I wrote a bunch more. And as soon as I got to California, I talked to a publisher right away. And right away he was interested. But as we talked, he's like, it just doesn't feel like the right time. And I knew he was right, because I was just so angry as I was writing that, it was going to come across. And he said, is there anything else? And it's so weird, because I grew up with severe ADHD. Like, reading was a punishment. Like, the worst Christmas present I could ever receive would be a book. Like, that's just cruel. Like it's, like it's worse than a spanking. Like, oh, you were excited about it. And then like, oh my God, you got me a book. This is horrible. So he said, do you have anything else? And I remember, like, one of the things, I'm kind of one of these pushy nurses, and I kind of force resources on you and take yourself, which I think is a good nurse. Like,
goodness, yes.
But one of the things, when I did work inpatient all those years ago, I was always finding resources for people, like Googling, like, here, you can read this, or here's a YouTube video, just like I make the patients go and find themselves now, or the individuals, all the individuals have to go and find themselves now. But I was giving it to them. And, I was, and, when I get up and do my suicide prevention speaks, I talk about how the LGBTQ IA community, there's, suicide rates are 2 to 8 times higher.
Right.
And yeah, that was like, so at that time when I was working inpatient at that area, I didn't have, resources that I could find about somebody who was gay. They became their authentic self. And, they went on to live this really great life, and because they became the person they were meant to be after they had went through a tragic like suicide attempt.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have anything. So I remember thinking, that was in 2007. I said, there needs to be something. There needs to be a book. There needs to be something for individuals in this situation. And so, fast forward to 2016 when I started writing, when I was talking to the publisher, he's like, have I missed my mark? Is this like, a subject that's already talked about that's no longer relevant? But I just felt really strongly that I should write it. So, I really, because I take care of young individuals and, it's torture for so many of them to read. I really wanted to make it a short fictional novel, full of all kinds of inspiration, but very real. Like you can go through this and you can be okay and you can be your authentic self. By being the best version of yourself, you can have the best life. And by not being yourself, you can hurt everyone around you. And if people can't accept you for who you are, they can just kind of move on out.
I am cheering on so many levels.
Yeah.
Because sexuality and gender is really one of my specialties besides spirituality. And it was fascinating to me as I was reading your book. I went, oh, she's actually covering LGBTQ issues. And hearing now that you are a woman of faith and military, it's such an interesting overlapping concentric circles there that most people would not put, and the fact that you made it fiction. So most of the resources out there are nonfiction, but as I read it, I thought, there is something to this about making it fictional. It kind of is more like a warm hug. Like it kind of throws the psyche off for a bit and allows you to, step your toes into it, especially if you are used to being marginalized and stigmatized. And the military doesn't have a great track record until more recently, with LGBTQ individuals. So I love that idea, girl.
Well, thank you. Yeah. And I mean, just to get, I talked to my patients the other year, like, would you read a nonfiction? No. Would you read a fiction? Well, maybe if it was short enough. So it was really important that I made it fiction. And actually, it was fun. It was fun to make it fiction. I had no idea how much fun it would be. Actually, most of it I voice typed and then I had to edit it. And that was what was so hard,
The formatting. Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So why do you think God or Spirit, the divine, whatever our listeners get down with, put it on your heart in those specific concentric circles?
Well, it's so interesting because I was chatting, yesterday with a group and stuff like that. People always say the word no judgment, no judgment. It's like, what, we're walking down the alley and it's like, oh, does that person look safe or whatnot? I got to move to the other side of the street just because they don't look safe or whatever. I'm not,
There are snap judgments made, yes.
You're making snap judgments, but I'm always accepting, like one of the things, and I use a lot of profanity, but I won't with you because I have to connect with my patients and I'm very thoughtful of your audience, but it's like,
well, you can. I cuss on this podcast.
Yeah, but I mean, I think I'd probably say I don't give a whatever. So it's like they come to me with whatever their moral struggle is or whatever their belief is, or like, hey, I just want you to know I worship Satan. I'm like, I don't care. I don't care. Like, what kind of person are you? Are you a good, kind person? Are you, do you do good for humanity? Do you, and like by me, that's just my nature. It's like, I don't care. I just care what kind of person you are. And I always, one of my neighbors and I were just having an argument the other day and we're good friends, but, she was telling me that I needed to, make a huge effort, for certain individual. I said, that's not really my calling. That's not really the type of person in this world. Like, why am I going to expend all this effort on, those individuals? That's not my calling. Like my calling is,
yes.
Yeah. And, but for me, it's just like, I think for whatever reason, God made me okay with other people being exactly who they are. And he made me okay with me and I'm okay with them. So, my entire childhood, for whatever reason, I always had a very, very close gay friend at all times. So I always seen individuals suffer. But, then over the years, so many people that I had cared for, they're like, I'd rather kill myself than be gay. And I'm like, are you crazy?
Right.
Like, really? Like, are you really crazy? Like, and then when I go to I remember one time I was in I think philosophy class and we were debating everything, race, sexual orientation. And, I really went in there as a neutral listener. It wasn't my day to present. And, this lovely young, 21-year-old gay man got up and talked about his life and his history and how much abuse and discrimination and everything he endured. There was somebody in the class who was just telling him he was so wrong. and just intuitively on a very gut level, I'm like, he's who he is. He's talking about how, he tried to do like electrical shocks on his genitals anytime he would think about somebody of the same gender. Do you think if he would rather kill himself than be dead, that's not who he is? Like, you just don't make any sense to me. Like, it's not logical. Like, he's who he is. And why does it really matter at all? Like, at the end of the day, the only people I want to be around are good, kind, loving, giving people. And I don't care about anything else besides that.
Yeah. Any of the trappings, race, religion, creed, sexuality, gender.
Yeah.
It's all, who cares? It's the outer. And what I love so much about hearing your impassioned approach is that as you show up authentically and recognizing your divine calling, you then free up other people to do the same.
Yeah.
So all of your patients, all of your colleagues, I mean, that really is, when we each show up in our spiritual giftings, the world would be so much better place.
Right. Well, and it's just, because I'm Christian, and I sometimes I wear a necklace with a cross. And, like one of my patients, this is years ago, came in. She's like, she was cheating on her spouse. And she said, and I know you're here to judge me. I said, I don't care. I don't care. I don't care. And I said, I don't know you. I don't know your spouse. You're not giving me an STD. I don't care. I don't care. I don't care. And I said, but why are you here?
You're here to sit in her suffering with her. It doesn't matter her religion. I love that.
Yeah, well, for her, it was infidelity in that particular issue. Like, she's like, I know you're going to judge me because, I'm cheating on my spouse. I said, but why are you here? If it's not an issue, I think it is an issue. Like, it is a moral injury to you. I said, I personally don't care, but you're the one who made the appointment. You're the one who wanted to see me. Something is bothering you that you want to talk to me about. So it's not my issue, it's yours. But let's move on with this conversation.
Yes, I love it. You are definitely very solution focused and to the point, and I appreciate that. I'm sure part of that is your natural personality, and I'm sure some experience with the military there as well.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
It's wonderful because it is so authentic to you that it comes out. And what I more meant was that you take your spiritual calling seriously. And so when people show up in pain, like you saw that through her words, that it was more of an issue than she was saying it was. She may have been afraid of the cross around your neck, but you weren't there for that. You were there to meet her at her point of need.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's interesting too, because, for whatever reason, I've had I've had a lot of LDS patients, because I treat over the years, I've treated a lot of postpartum depression, and then they tell their friends, go see her. She's very easy. Because one of my dearest friends is LDS. But at the same time, I've had a decent amount of patients who consider themselves to be Satan worshipers. And I'll spend a lot of time with them, chatting with them and getting to know them. And I'll be like, okay, well, one of the big issues that I'm finding with you, that why you're seeking treatment from me, is extreme social isolation, and you're very lonely, and you don't have a support network, and you have this horrible family. And like, we'll literally search, like, if you're an alcoholic, we could send you to AA, but you don't
where
drink.
Do we send you? Yeah. And
some of the individuals end up going to church groups because that's all I can find. I mean, like, we sit there and search together, and it's like, is there anything that applies to you? I was like, well, maybe I will go try that, support group through the church. I'm like, okay, whatever works. Okay.
That's fascinating and awesome.
Yeah. But I mean, it's about social connection and being supported in a healthy environment.
Yes, and I wish more people could see that. It really does transcend. And so that was my passion in opening my private practice, was to provide a place that not only recognized each person's faith system, but allowed it to be part of their holistic approach, because we are by nature, in my opinion, spiritual beings. And so I don't care what they find helpful. We know from the research, right, that people's spirituality, if applied well, can be the greatest source of support, but it can also be their greatest wound, taking it back to those LGBTQ individuals, for example, who may not have been able to come to terms with both their sexuality and their spirituality.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And the thing is too, when stuff like that happens, and I think, I'm so blessed that actually, one of the things civilians should know is, in the military, you get to spend a lot more time with your patients in private practice.
Yes.
Because we're getting a salary. We don't have to, see so many patients to support us. But, knowing the individuals, I get a chance to sit there and say, that's what that person did. They abuse their religious authority, and really trying to separate that from the spirituality,
Yes.
And it's interesting because, on a personal note, I'm in the process of buying and selling a home. And so I have a contract with the selling agent, but he doesn't have to find me a house to buy. And I ended up buying from someone else. And, one of the biggest reasons, he was just such a Debbie Downer. He was always setting realistic parameters. I'm like, listen, you're not a person of faith. Like, I have faith. And it was so interesting because the girl who sold the house to me and made the deal with me, like, instantly we started talking about how we had studied The Secret and, the different authors that we had read. And so when I was talking to her about the house, I was going to put the offer in. She's like, let's do whatever it takes to make it happen. Like, and it was just all about faith. Whereas him, I've kind of shut him down. Like, here, this is your limited scope of work that you can do because it's okay. Well, realistic parameters says, you're like, okay, well, I don't care about that. I'm a person of faith and things can work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that you're constantly giving yourself permission to pull from all of you.
Yeah. And if I would have taken his realistic parameters, I would have been very depressed. I mean, like, what I obtained because I didn't buy into this limited mindset, because I held on to faith, was so much better. So, yeah. And so, I try to really explain that to people. It's a belief system that things will get better. It's a belief system that, that there's a meaning and purpose to your suffering. It's a belief system that there's something greater. There's a belief system that you're part of the puzzle to life. Like, that's what spirituality is. It's about being, centered and grounded and being a good person and feeling good and getting in touch with your own intuition.
And showing up in your authenticity.
Yes. Yeah.
You're so known for now. Yes.
Yeah.
So, girl, what's next for you? What do you still envision in your future? What's part of your spiritual calling to this planet? So,
one of the things that I have found, because you go in waves, and I'm very, very impressed with your practice, by the way,
Thank you.
How organized and how spot on and how technology advanced you are. I'm like,
I appreciate that.
I was like, she has so many cool things. I wish I had more time because I'll be honest, they get their pound of flesh from me. But like to really follow, like every day, like go through what you're doing. But it's very, very amazing. I actually have another book coming out in November.
Ooh.
So Sarah from the book, her journey continues big time. So this one definitely focuses a lot more on Sarah. It's called Single, Pitiful, and Unlovable, ... Yeah, right.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a lot more funny and fun, but then there's some really deep and really hard and really real things. And a lot of the stuff that, we tell ourselves in relationships, it's just, we say every day, that's just crap. Like a lot of that stuff's called out in there, like, oh, no expectations. So there's a scene in there where Sarah's has a good friend, and he's always adamant, no expectations. And so he goes on a date with this girl, and she has like horrible hygiene, and like he comes back, and Sarah's like, well, you said no expectations, So it's, it's calling people out on the crap that we feed our brain every single day.
Yes.
And again, it's her journey. I pull a few of the other characters along the journey with her journey through, all kinds of things in her life as far as relationships going, but also becoming the person that she needs to be, So, she has incredible highs and incredible lows, but it's always refining her character and helping her to grow. And I definitely think it's something that a lot of single people need to read. And, if you're married, give it to your married friend, or if you just want to understand, more healthy relationships, it's just all the best stuff that I have read or learned or experienced or heard from patients, over a lot of years. And I just kind of took it and put it into a fictional novel, again, small and digestible, but really developed the character as well. And, I have fortunately I have an international connection, because I have lived abroad, and, so I do have her, moving around the world a bit. But it's not just, it's the journey that she's on, her comprehensive character. It's not just her dating, and for me, like, being raised by my grandmother, it was a chance for me to, like, even like it's been 22 years since her death, when I was writing, about, the character, like, yes, you can pull things from your own life. And so much of it is not at all from my life, but it was my chance to really process my grandmother's death in there. And I was like really crying hard when I was writing some of the book, but I love doing public speaking. And my third book, actually, so there's going to be 4 books, Single, Pitiful, and yeah, so it's 4. And so it starts off with why you try to kill yourself, but the characters continue to develop and grow. So the next one is, primarily about single life and relationships. And then the third one will be about bullies. But in the process, I'm doing a lot of volunteer public speaking, going to a lot of schools, and I really love speaking. I don't always necessarily love speaking to college students because they get their laptops in there, and like you're sitting there, it's like there's like 70 people in front of you, and they're just all on their laptops.
Well, so, sounds like my undergraduate classroom most evenings. Yes.
Yeah. And it's just, like yesterday I was at a smaller college and they're not allowed to have any technology. So it was so much nicer than some of the big universities. So I don't think I would like to do that, but I love to, do public speaking, and I'd like to reach people who want to receive it more.
I am just in awe, as I'm sure most people are who get to hang out with you for a little bit, because you've got so much under your belt in just 40 years, from right Navy to all these commendations to, my God, psychiatric nurse of the year, right? That's impressive. Or mental health nurse, same thing. To being an author, to running 80 marathons, to traveling. I
stay single, Tamara. Stay single.
Okay, that's the key. I've never done that.
You remember that Seinfeld episode with like George and Jerry, and George, he uses that little tiny piece of lettuce, and that's the only part of his brain he thinks, and then he switches, and then all of a sudden he only uses a little tiny piece of lettuce.
Yes.
It's like, oh. Yeah.
Do you see companionship in your future sometime? Or are you content?
With an extreme winter. Yeah. Just being overseas, and I've had a bit of health problems that are in the process of clearing up over the past couple of years. And it's just kind of like, after I take care of, guys all day long, like that's it.
Yeah.
But I'm having a big surgery next month, and then I hope to be healthy. But, I think, even writing too, it's just really held me accountable to a standard. And I was telling I'm an international host, and I was telling one of the students, this guy, he wouldn't stop calling me and texting me and emailing me, and he was just a complete loser. I hate to say that, but there's no other way to say it. And so I was taking my dogs for a walk, and I'm a responsible pet owner, and I, pick up after my pets. So my phone was ringing, and he was calling me, and so I had the choice to pick up dog poop or talk to him, and I was like, I'd rather pick up dog poop. And so there's
a marker for you. Yeah.
I was telling this to the student, and he's like, that is so mean, you need to give him a chance. I'm like, are you telling me I should date a loser? Like, no, winners only. So I am completely open to a really, really great person and a great relationship, but that's it.
Well, I love it. And I just adore you and your spirit, and definitely be praying for your surgery. And thank you so much for sharing some time with us tonight.
Well, I adore you, and I appreciate all the work you're doing. And you are hugely reaching people with this podcast, this time that you're committing, and this energy and researching people. So thank you. And you have such a fun, open energy, and I love that, you're open to all. So thank you again for your time. I really appreciate it. And thank you for contacting me. It's been wonderful to chat with you.
Where can people hang out with you if they want to know more about you and the book, Why You Killed Yourself, and the upcoming sequels?
I'm most active on Instagram.
Okay.
Like Jamie Sorenson, author, Jamie. I think it's Jamie M, like with an M, because there's a Jamie Sorenson who's a doctor, and that's not me. Jamie M for Marie, Sorenson, Sorenson, author on Instagram. I'm very active on there. I also do Jamie Sorenson author Facebook page. And I try, I definitely think that I respond to my messages. Facebook has me like at a low percentage of responding to my messages, but I think it's just because they don't pick up on the ones that we responded to on Instagram. But yeah, it's been really amazing to connect with people all over the world that way. And, from, a young girl in Pakistan, telling me her struggles about wanting, to live a life like Selena Gomez, but feeling so restricted. To, just people around the world. Sometimes people just want to, just send me a text message, like, 3 or 4 messages or through Instagram, not text message. Just tell me about all their pain there. And I'm like, I'm really sorry to hear that. Obviously people think that I'm their therapist. So like, hey, I got to shut this down. Like, this is not a relationship, but
we all want to be seen and heard. And I love that you're getting that. And so I will have links to all that in the show notes and your book. So that way nobody has to pull over and try to find you right now. They can just snag it right from there. So thank you so much again.
All right. Thank you so much, Tamara. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for
listening to the Sacred Psychology Podcast. I pray you found some inspiration and empowerment to go out and make this life the most fulfilling possible. You can follow Sacred Psychology on Facebook and YouTube. If you haven't yet, please go to Apple Podcasts and subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. Tag us on social media and let us know what you think as well. Please note that the information provided is not meant to convey professional, psychological, or medical advice. If you could use such services, I highly recommend seeking them out from someone you trust. To get in touch with me personally or to see how we might work together, please check out ariatherapy.com or talesfromatrapezoid.com. Until next time, everyone.